Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick update on the state case of the Whitmer Fednapping hoax. I think everybody's aware of the federal case that 6 men were charged. 2 men, Ty Garvin and Caleb Franks, took plea deals. 4 men went to trial. That was Adam Fox, Barry Croft, Brandon Caserta, and Daniel Harris. In the first federal trial, there was a mistrial declared as to Adam Fox and Barry Croft, but the jury acquitted Brandon Caserta and Daniel Harris. They found them not guilty. So basically, a jury had concluded that the FBI was trying to frame these guys and they hadn't done anything wrong. They weren't sure about Adam Fox or Barry Croft, so they retry Adam Fox and Barry Croft. In that retrial, it should have been harder for the government to make their case because now they had to prove that Adam and Barry were working together rather than this group of 6 people that they claimed were part of this conspiracy to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. But what ended up happening, and there was so much stuff, so much misconduct by the judge in that case, so many examples of him preventing the jury from seeing exculpatory information. And just kind of putting his finger on the scale, limiting the defense's ability to cross-examine witnesses, limiting it to 20 minutes, but giving the prosecution all the time in the world they need. The judge literally saying to the defense, like that this is a crap line of argument or this is a crap line of questioning in front of the jury, which tainted that retrial. And also, they brought in a more quote-unquote diverse jury, so not a jury of their peers, and those people were willing to convict Adam Fox and Barry Croft in this retrial. So the government has taken that conviction, and they're now trying to go after anyone that was loosely associated with these guys or the Wolverine Watchmen militia group, people who never committed a crime, never did anything wrong, were not participating in all of this stuff. You allowed someone to use your property for a completely legal training exercise at one point. So you're now being charged with providing material support to terrorism. Oh, you were in the same group chat, you posted some spicy memes. And so what's interesting is that the federal court is not allowed to be televised, but state court is. So for the first time, we're seeing these FBI agents take the stand and testify. They did not testify in the federal case because they knew better. The 3 lead FBI agents in this case have all been accused of misconduct, okay? And I have seen all of the discovery in the first federal trial. I've seen documentation and evidence that the jury didn't even get to see. So I know how egregious the FBI's actions in this case actually were. Most people, the general public, don't know that. They haven't seen it all. And I'm working on a documentary on that case. It's going to be called Patriot Conspiracy, where we're going to go back in time and we're going to look at the FBI's PatCon operations, things like Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City, the Aryan Republican Army, the Order of St. John. We are going to show that, hey, the FBI has a pattern of targeting people and creating fake front groups and trying to instigate criminal activity going back to at least the 80s, or at least the 90s, possibly as early as 1983. And they may give them different operational code names. We know that they shut down PatCon operations. There were at least 3 PatCon operations that we know about, possibly more. So the Whitmer Fednapping hoax, that was called Operation Cold Snap, right? So they just give it a different operational name, but if you look at the totality of what they're doing and the pattern of activity, it's obvious that they're following in the PatCon legacy. So that documentary is going to expose a lot of stuff that the jury didn't even get to see, that most members of the general public aren't aware of, and even most journalists that followed the case, they haven't gotten access to everything. They don't know the extent of the exculpatory information that has been hidden from the public, and they don't know how absurd it is, the FBI's justification for opening investigations to people. And that, I think, is the most important thing that I want people to know, that they have lied about and tried to obfuscate what it is that is providing the so-called probable cause for them to open investigations into people. All right, you're supposed to have probable cause of criminal activity. And we were fed a story about how Dan mysteriously came across this group on Facebook and then somehow became an informant and working for the FBI in less than 2 weeks. And I don't believe that the story that they have given us is true. I think that they wanted to target this group specifically. And I think that Dan Chappell was somebody that volunteered to do so. And I think he was working with his friend, Detective Ramirez, who was on a gang task force. And I think these guys wanted to pad their resume. What we learned in the state case is that Detective Ramirez, a Michigan police officer and detective, had an FBI supervisor. Why is that? What is the FBI doing supervising police, local police and state police? Is that normal? I'm not sure that it is. We know that Special Agent Jason Chambers was going to create a private intelligence company. In fact, he did create that company. It was called EXE Intel or X Intel. And that company was seeking a multi-million-dollar contract with the federal government and was also pitching its skills to private companies in the private sector to engage in things like corporate espionage and using intelligence gathering that these skills that he learned as an FBI agent, trying to market that to make millions of dollars. He was texting other FBI agents saying, hey, I'm going to be retiring soon and going into the private sector. I need a big case before I retire, something that I can use to segue my career into the private sector with the EXE Intel, seeking a multi-million-dollar contract to advise the government on cases of domestic terrorism. Well, if we had a big DT case, that might help his career tremendously, right? And so he said he was going to run it as a TEI investigation with or without approval from his superiors at the FBI. So one of the things that we've learned is that the pretext to open this case was false. They said that there were numerous threats against law enforcement officers, and that's why they initially opened the case into the Wolverine Watchman, but that's not actually what occurred. Take a listen.
Bagging and tagging, collecting evidence, right, is an important part of this?
Yeah, it can be important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious. I saw memes. I'm wondering where the evidence is of these numerous threats to law enforcement that you saw. Do we have those?
There's a lot of evidence of the QRFs.
That's not the question, Agent. I'm not talking about the QRFs. I'm talking about numerous threats to law enforcement. Do we have numerous threats to law enforcement?
I'm sorry, what do you consider to be a threat?
Well, what do you consider a threat to law enforcement?
I consider QRFs to be a threat to law enforcement.
Based on what?
Based on the description that they're going to attack law enforcement when called upon.
When called upon, when they're policing the police, as we heard, correct?
Yeah.
And you saw all of this in these few things that you looked at? Right there on that day that you met Dan, right? On what day was it? The 17th, is that correct? Right, that was the day you met Dan? On March 17th, you saw all of these things that you're describing?
So the first day I met Dan, I saw references to the QRF in the location drop in the pings. I didn't see all of these exhibits that are in the binder describing the QRFs at that time.
So if you had testified previously and said that on the 17th, you saw numerous communications on an encrypted application involving violence against police officers, is that actually what you saw on the 17th? Because it doesn't sound like it to me.
I think it's a fair summary of my interpretation of what I saw, but
a fair summary of my interpretation of what I saw, which was actually memes, a legally available app, a hunting app, and schematics for a firearm that, again, is not illegal to possess, that actually came from a website. So that's I want people to understand that was their pretext for opening this investigation. Is people posted spicy memes. They talked about downloading a hunting app that is perfectly legal to download. There's nothing illegal about that. And then they posted a schematics to a firearm. And again, that was just a screenshot from someone else's website. So I want people to understand, like, and now the FBI refers to memes as propaganda captioned images. Like, it is so ridiculous. I want people to understand, though, they lie. They twist things. They claim there were numerous threats to police officers, and that's why they opened the investigation into the Wolverine Watchmen. That isn't true. There were not multiple threats to law enforcement. There were some memes, and then there were a couple other things that were posted, none of which was illegal. None of that was a crime. None of it was talking about any kind of plot. 5 months into the investigation, they admit that there was no plot. Their own informant said, hey, there's no plan here. This is just a waste of time. And they still said, well, push, push, push. You know, try to set these people up. Try to bring this person into the group. Try to do this. Look at you bringing people together, keeping this thing going. Just one informant, Dan Chappell, was paid $54,000. They gave him money to move him so he could buy a new home. They bought him a fancy Surface laptop. They got him an Apple Watch. I mean, it's just all kinds of nonsense and perks and goodies. And for 6 months of work, that's what he would have made in an entire year. That informant texted his FBI handler saying, oh, I'm building my resume. Building your resume for what exactly? What exactly was going on here? And so I want people to understand and to recognize that watching this state case is very important. I'm surprised how little people are paying attention to this, because the federal case was a big deal. People paid attention to that. They were interested in that, and they understood that what the FBI did there was wrong, and they can do that to all of us. We cannot allow them to get away with it. And people are missing out on little details like that because no one's watching. 50 people were tuned in just today watching this. It's like you forget things so easily. We're not going to forget. We're going to put out our documentary, and we're going to show people just how insane and egregious the FBI's behavior was in this case, and how they are still trying to frame innocent men who never committed a crime, saying, oh yeah, you provided material support to terrorism because you were in the same group chat as these guys, or because you let someone do legal firearms defensive training on your property, and then we later tried to frame those guys. So somehow that's your fault. You were providing material support for terrorism, and we're going to try to throw you in prison for the rest of your life. Like, understand the stakes here, and that this could happen to anyone. You're in the wrong group chat with somebody. You want to learn some firearms training, some legal defensive training. Oh, now you might be walking into an active terrorism enterprise investigation. So I've been posting clips on my Telegram channel for people who are not aware of that. It is t.me/RadixVerum. I'll put the link in the video description here. This is FBI Special Agent Henrik Impala. He is accused of committing perjury in a prior case, by the way. He has lied under oath in this case so far. We've caught him doing it and contradicting his testimony in the previous state case that was out of Traverse City, Michigan, involving people like the Null brothers. So I want folks to understand this is so much bigger than, I guess, what you might initially think. And it's still ongoing. It hasn't stopped. And we need to expose this, and we need to get the truth out. And I think that one way to do that is to keep watching what's going on in the state cases, keep reporting on it, bring sunlight to this. Because quite frankly, that is the best remedy for lies, dishonesty, trying to frame innocent people, is to just expose these people to the sunlight, show that they lie, and how they try to ruin innocent American citizens who they took an oath to serve, protect, and defend, as well as the Constitution. And they are doing none of that. I want folks to see they spend their time sitting there, enriching themselves, making money by targeting regular people, while everyone else was losing their jobs during the lockdowns in 2020 and losing their small businesses These guys made money targeting those vulnerable people. Pete Musico was, and Paul Bellar and Joe Morrison, they were victims of that stuff. Paul Bellar ended up becoming homeless. He got evicted from his home because of Whitmer's policies. And he still didn't try to engage in any criminal activity. So it's just shocking, and we need to be a voice for the voiceless. If you'd like to contribute to the documentary, you can donate to my Cash App. Any little bit helps. It costs a lot of money to get this done and get it done right, but I think it's really important. So if you'd like to support it, I appreciate it. It's my first time doing a feature-length documentary, and it's a lot of work. I do not have a team of people. I have to do all of this myself, and I have to pay to travel. I've got to pay for equipment, for software. I have to hire an editor because I do need some help. So any little bit you guys can donate, that all helps. It all adds up. Read